Alex Crawford, who is in Benghazi in Libya for us now. Alex, thank you for joining us. I was speaking earlier to two young men whose house was not washed away by this, but they said that the immediate need in Derna is to recover the bodies from the mud.
Well, I've been speaking to survivors on the ground and people who have rushed down there to try and help out the aid effort. And the clear message that is coming through is that the civilians there feel they're very much doing it on their own. I spoke to a retired engineer who'd gone down there from Benghazi, and he said that he was in a group of about four sort of pensioners, really, who were digging bodies out themselves. And he said there were scores and scores and scores of these small groups of civilians who were desperately just trying to use their hands in areas where he said no machinery could get to. They themselves had pulled out 8 bodies, or the remains of bodies, in the last couple of hours. Just that one small group of 4 older men. He said it was a catastrophe of what he described as biblical proportions. Every people I speak to down there, they sound utterly shocked. Another man told me about how his house had survived, but in front of him, he walked along and there was a bank of flats, apartments, 7-story high, 9-story high, schools, hospitals, all flattened, all washed away. There was nothing there. It was as if they didn't exist anymore. There was nothing there. And he said, Derna is gone. He was near the center, and he said, the center has gone. I said, how many people do you estimate? He said, just in those flats alone, just right in front of his house, he thought there were several thousand just washed away, whole buildings with scores and scores, hundreds of families inside, just obliterated, washed away. They're no longer. His road outside his house, which was on slightly higher ground above where this torrent of water had just cascaded down, smashing buildings. So fierce, water so fierce, it smashed buildings out the way. It put trees on top, it put cars on top of trees. It literally, nothing, wouldn't leave anything standing in its way. And he said that there were rows and rows of dead bodies. So I think the number of those who have died at the moment appears to be seriously underestimated. There's a general feeling that this is a terrible, terrible tragedy that was waiting to happen. Many of them are dating it back to the toppling of Colonel Gaddafi, the Libyan dictator who was ousted in a NATO military campaign way back in 2011. Since then, the country has suffered a huge amount of upheaval, devastation, civil war. It is run by 2 rival governments in the east and the west. That has not helped the growth of the country to now gone from being a very relatively rich country in Africa to one of a basket case, an economic and emotional humanitarian basket case with 2 rival governments propped up by militia that are not helping the coordination of any aid effort. We flew in today and the place is pretty much in chaos. We saw streams of what appeared to be a football team taking down truckloads of aid down to Derna and beyond. But it's not a fully functioning country. It's riven with corruption. It's had years and years of poor infrastructure, the collapse of the 2 dams. A report last year showed that one hadn't been looked at in 20 years. So they're saying this was a natural disaster which has been compounded, exacerbated, and driven by human error, by massive human catastrophe. And at the heart of it is corruption, poor governance, lack of international involvement. Their only involvement has been to ensure that key oil and natural resources are preserved. They're telling me that they blame not only the 2 governments and anyone who's in control in Libya, but also the lack of international foresight and now real evidence of international aid on the ground.